So with that, let me dive into our presentation. We've got something very, very exciting to talk about today. Cyber Common Operating Picture. So it's kind of a buzzword that's out there right now, but let's talk about what it means and where it's derived from and what it's built from. So generally, this idea of a common operating picture, I know a lot of the folks in here are from town and support the arsenal in some way. The idea of a common operating picture is really sourced from the military term, and understanding the troops, supply chain, troops on the ground. Hey, what's my common operating picture, and how do I understand what the parts are that I need to fulfill my mission, all in kind of one perspective or one view. And the application of that to cybersecurity is relatively new. But this whole idea of common operating picture is really just a new term for some old idea. And that's really getting to the concept of the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And that's not me on the screen there, unfortunately, but it was really first coined by the philosopher Aristotle. And again, the idea here is that it's important to understand the holistic perspective of any system that's out there, any view, to really fully understand where you are. So it was really first understood from a human body perspective that if you can't really move your arm without your brain telling you where to go and the blood flow from your heart. So you have to understand the holistic view of whatever system that is or organism. So that's the idea. So next slide. So let's talk about the application of that idea to the cyber common operating picture. So this has been really codified or formalized now. So there's new guidance from the joint publication 312R. Cyberspace operations. Again, this is very much a DoD document, but it defines this idea of cyber common operating picture and something that is a goal for all of us. And it really defines it as real-time, comprehensive situational awareness, the ability to rapidly fuse, correlate, and display data from different sensors in your environment. So again, the idea here is we need to get an understanding, similar to Aristotle, of your human body and how it works, to how does your IT systems, how do your programs and your networks, how do they all come together, and what are your issues, and how do you manage the holistic environment comprehensively. So some of the key features that I'm going to talk about here, how do we use the automated tools and technologies that you have out there, the different scanners across different domains, whether it's your configuration management or vulnerability scanners, in really using that to the data that you collect from those scanners, how do you normalize, aggregate it, and then how do you provide the continuous monitoring of your IT systems, networks, and programs? And then how do you use that information in near real time to better manage your risk? That's ultimately what we're trying to do. And then candidly, it really allows you to apply those resources in a way that makes you have more informed risk decision making and ultimately drives down your cost. And that's really what we all care about is how do we do things more efficiently, effectively, and manage the resources that we have. So this idea of a cyber common operating picture, or cyber COP, is really where it's at right now. It's how do you use the data to make more meaningful risk management decisions. So very powerful idea. Next slide. So let's talk about the challenging environment that we're all faced with and why this is so important. So, and a lot of you in the room here operate in these types of organizations that are very disparate, decentralized. You have different subcomponent organizations. They have different missions. There's different personalities, people. They're using different tools. There's different architectures or enclaves of data. And then even the data types, the sensitivity of the data that's being processed across these disparate missions are all different. So this is an incredibly complex environment that we're dealing with. And to be candid, if you're a CISO, CIO, or an IT manager, this is daunting. This is daunting stuff. How do you get a view, how do you manage to a risk profile or uniform risk profile when you have all these variables? So it's a very, very complex environment. So the reality is, given this environment, you have some very, very difficult challenges. Very difficult to get that comprehensive view. Often you're setting performance metrics, and it's really difficult to get a consistent view of what those are, how to measure them, and having complete visibility of your environment right now in most organizations is almost impossible. And then the reality is, in conversations with folks in the industry, you really operate on gut feel or instinct. And there's a handful of people out there that are very highly intuitive and almost psychic, and they make good decisions and it works. But the reality is, the other 99%, they're not making the right decisions. So you have to have the data to make those decisions, and that's what this solution is all about. And then obviously if you don't have the data, there's this competing political push-pull. You know, you're more easily influenced by some more political variables that are out there because you don't have the data to defend against the decisions you're making. And then again, like I talked about, the cost to manage this type of environment without understanding it very well is very, very high, and because you can't prioritize what you have. So the next set of slides here. So what is the solution? And this is very, very much a high-level view here. There's a lot of details, and I'm going to talk through each of these this in more detail. But at a high level, it's really about driving behavior change. So we want to pull data from the sensors that you have out there, aggregate and normalize that data, which is a challenge in its own right. And then you want to create some data analytics to help drive the behavior that you want. And there's some sophistication there, and we've been able to come up with some ideas that really help push the needle around overlaying a behavioral science-based heuristic to help drive the right behavior that you want. But that behavior has to be built on what I call key effectiveness measures. So what are the metrics that are most meaningful to you and your organization? And that's what you need to be measuring. So that idea of effectiveness measure is really, really important. You have to have the right tools then to actually enable the collection of the data to support the definition or the measurement of those measures. And then ultimately you need to have the architecture to actually enable the process flow or information flow of the information that you have. And then there's quite a bit of secret sauce associated with this. You have to come up with a custom algorithm and specific scripts, again, tailored to what you want to measure to help drive the right behavior. And the way I characterize this is you want to create a risk economy. So you want to drive the behavior you want, but you want to enable friendly competition, use an incentive structure to help present where you are and where you need to go and help drive the behavior you want. So there's some secret sauce, there's some change management involved, there's some tailoring, it takes some time, but you need to think through what those algorithm scripts look like. And then the idea of this is, again, all the data is ultimately going to be pushed to a risk scoring dashboard. And how you structure the dashboard is of critical importance. It has to be easily digestible and understood. It has to be actionable. You have to present data that's actionable, and it has to be actionable at multiple levels. So your commander, C-suite folks need to be able to see, hey, how well am I doing? How well am I trending? Your business folks need to be able to say, hey, what business departments are doing well and how well are they doing against specific domains within cyber? And then at the security practitioner level or system level, they need to know, hey, what are the specific changes or issues that I need to make to fix those changes? And so the next time you run these scans, and again, the cadence is going to be whatever you want to set it at, you're running and creating a system where you're pulling automated data feeds in based on what's important to you, measuring it and scoring it, and incentivizing behavior based on those scores. And over time, you're changing the culture, you're changing the game of your organization. But you have to do this slow. This is not something that's out of the box. It's not something you flick the switch. You have to take it in bite-sized chunks and build it over time. You have to show wins. You have to show, hey, we're doing this really well for identity management. We're doing this really well for incident management. And then you build and you expand. So these key building blocks are very, very important. And I want to talk through each one in a little bit more detail. So next slide. So again, it sounds scary, but the reality is, I've been doing this for a long time, working with a lot of different organizations. A lot of people out there don't have a good handle on their mission. And what I recommend, first and foremost, if you haven't done it already, to do what I call business impact assessment. What are those business processes that are fundamental to your mission? What are the key components that enable your mission? What are the key data assets and data types or the sensitivity of the data that you need to enable those processes to fulfill your mission? You have to have an understanding of that to even begin this CyberCop solution. You need to know your mission, what are the building blocks of what it means. So doing that business impact assessment, truly understanding what's important and what's not, is critical. Again, fundamental philosophy here, not everything is created equal. So you got to focus on the stuff that's important. You need to understand what's important to your mission, and then you can move on. So the next slide. So we need to move on understanding your mission to then, okay, how does that inform or influence? What are those key effectiveness measures? This is a really, really important concept. So because this really underpins how you're going to build your solution. Again, not everything's created equal. So what's not and what's important to you? Well, you need to figure that out. So the first thing you have to do is really understand that, and we got to kind of move away from some of the traditional compliance type mindset that we might have. A lot of people, if you've pressed the button one time, a lot of people, look at, hey, I just need to look at this, or I need to look at some compliance framework. Do I have a process? Do I not? Do I have a structure? It's kind of that check the box kind of mentality. But the reality is, I'm using this example on the screen here, whether you have a process, and in this example you have a process to remove unauthorized hardware, whether you have a process or not, it doesn't mean you're doing it well. It doesn't mean you're doing it effectively. It doesn't mean it's really helping your organization. So whether you have it or not, it doesn't matter. It may matter for a compliance checkpoint perspective. I get it. But we got to move beyond that, and that's where we need to move when we talk about how do you define key effectiveness measures. So if you click the next button, so here, kind of following this example now, you can build a metric that includes attributes of timeliness, accuracy, and coverage. So not only do you now know you have a process of whether you can remove unauthorized hardware, you now know you can find and remove an unauthorized piece of hardware within 24 hours, and who's doing it, and where it's happening. So now you can start to understand, hey, is this really effective? Is this working? What's my tolerance? Can I be, not know something for 24 hours? Can it be 48 hours? Do I need to know if it's on the network only 1 hour? Again, we're all security professionals here. You cannot be 100% secure, so you have to understand, hey, what's the tolerance? What's the variance that you're willing to accept? So you have to have that understanding when you start moving forward. And then ultimately, kind of the nirvana here, it takes time to get there. Again, like I said, this is an evolution. You don't do this overnight, but you ultimately want to define the probability of what you're willing to accept from a risk perspective. And following the example here, that you have probability that a compromise is caused by unauthorized hardware within specific control limits. So you want to define the parameters of what you're willing to accept, and then you need to work around those boundaries. And then the idea, the secret sauce in the algorithm that we've created and we can tailor is how do you pull the automated feeds from the different tools to create that algorithm, and then you have triggers that will enable you to understand, hey, am I within my parameters or outside of those parameters? So you want to create a system that's going to measure what's important to you in near real time using automated tools defined with real effectiveness measures, not just to check the box, hey, do I have it or not, but is it working, and is it working within the bounds that are important to me, that are important and aligns with my risk profile? So fundamental idea, and one of the first things we do outside of doing the business impact assessment, understanding the mission, is going to the C-suite or commander level. What are those metrics or measures that are fundamental to you that you want to see at different levels, at the executive level and then at the business level? What are those measures that you want to see? And at the system level, there's a little bit more specificity there. What do they want to look at? And you can build against those domains, those parameters. That helps set the construct for how you want to develop your program. So very, very powerful idea that we need to start getting hold of. Again, I feel like most industries on the left here, we got to keep pushing to the right. And this idea of cyber common operating picture is really, we have to drive to the right to do it. Next slide. All right, so one of the building blocks was the right tools and technology. So you now have defined the measures. So how do you get there? Well, you have to make sure you have the right tools and technology that can capture the information to enable you to measure what you want to measure. So, in doing this numerous times, run into a situation where, hey, we want to measure this, and I'm like, that sounds great, fantastic, but you don't have the tools to do it. So we either got to procure the tools or figure something out. So, or hey, let's focus on something else with the tools that you have, and leverage what you have first. So there's kind of a balancing act here, but you got to make sure you have the right tools, so you have the capability to capture the information that you need and want to monitor. And then obviously those tools need to make sure that, again, you can capture the accuracy, the coverage, and timeliness, those other capability measures that I was talking about. You want to make sure that those tools have that capability as well. Architecture, again, talking earlier, this is a kind of a pretty sophisticated issue, but how the data flows in, where you're capturing it from different tools, whether you're in an enclave, a secure environment, how do you move data, and how does that work? It gets sophisticated really quick, I'll be honest with you, especially when you're dealing with critical infrastructure type systems. The reality is you might have multiple databases that's feeding into different, into your dashboard based on the sensitivity of that data. How you design your database and the back end is very, very important, because that's going to really dictate what you can do with your dashboard, how you're presenting your information, what are your measures. So the design of the database, the design of the architecture, and how you're routing the data flows, very, very important. So this is, again, not something that you can just tackle, hey, I want to run a cyber cop, and Jamie, let's do it. We can do it in a week. Let's make it happen. You got to be very, very thoughtful about this, and we got to go through an understanding around, again, what you're measuring, what you need, and then how does it support your architecture, and do we need to make any modifications to your architecture, and what are the implications of that. So really, really important to have that. So the secret sauce, don't want to get too technical here, but you're capturing the data, you got the tools, you developed your database, you're aggregating it, and you have to develop custom algorithms and scripts to make sure you're presenting the data that you want, and you're incentivizing the right behavior. This is really difficult, to be candid, because the prioritization of that data is really what you're driving to, and you have to make sure that how you develop these scripts are going to give you the information in the right priority order, and that they're tailorable and customizable, because they're going to change. What happens often is you're looking at one data set and then you correlate with another data set, so this person has some configuration management issues, but it's a terminal known for phishing attacks. So you have a multiplier, so you can tune the multiplier to say, well, hey, if this terminal, we know it's a known threat, is being targeted, if something is out of line there, the grade on that just shoots off the charts, and so they got an F, or whatever score is 0 to 100, if whatever structure you're using. You can manipulate those queries and scripts to have some customization. But again, you want to help drive the right behavior based on these. And this takes a little bit of time, but it's exciting when it works. And I've seen it work multiple times. You set all this up, and we're doing this now for numerous clients. But when you do these queries right, it's giving them the information, it's changing the behavior. But you gotta think through this in a very informed way. But how you organize it is pretty powerful. So then ultimately this is, you're driving behavior change, you're collecting data, you have these scripts, you custom algorithms, you got your back end architecture set. Again, it's no small feat. But then ultimately what happens with this? Well, it informs this dashboard. And the dashboard's going to give you a grade. And it's going to give you a grade at the enterprise level, or whatever the scope of the solution that you currently have. Again, you can build this incrementally, and that's what I'd recommend. Focus on a specific domain, a department, an organization. Scan that and just kind of show progress. But ultimately, you get to the enterprise level. There's a grade. You can trend and show scores, whatever cadence you want. It could be daily, weekly, monthly, and the metrics that you have up there. For the executives, what are those 2-3 key metrics that they want to have a pulse on or a beat on? They get to see that, and ultimately this dashboard becomes your risk management tool or primary console to manage your program. And then at the business level, they get to build around what are the metrics that are important for them. So they get to know, hey, these are my key business processes. I want to make sure I'm managing against those, and what are those measures, and they can see. And then your IT level as well. So, I don't want to get too deep here, but if there's a way you can see, and I encourage all of you to go to our booth. We have a view here, a demonstration that shows you at the executive level, hey, there's a trend. We're doing really well, but we're starting to trend down, and why? Well, you can kind of click on the business unit and say, well, this business unit is not doing very well, and it looks like in the incident management domain they're doing really poor. What's going on? You drill down. And you can see, well, there's a bunch of different domains here. It looks like malware is an issue. And you click on malware, and it goes down to the IP, user ID, terminal level. And you can scroll down and say, hey, Joe Smith over here, his malware, targets are out of variance by how many thousands. And it turns out that he was streaming porn. So from the top to the bottom level, you can see that there's the dashboard ideally should be able to show, hey, I'm starting to trend down, but why? And it provides you with the drill down flow of information that's actionable to make changes, to make fixes, to help your risk posture. So the next time that scan comes, and whatever the cadence is, you get a better grade. And the key takeaway for this too is, again, that risk economy. So if you have a disparate organization with multiple component groups, they're scored and they're working to compete against each other, and they're incentivized to get better scores. So, there's a friendly competition around, how well I'm doing and how well I'm not doing. So that helps drive the behavior change that you want. And again, fundamentally, this is an evolution. To do this right, it's not out of the box, not a one and done. This has to evolve with your program. You're gonna bring on new systems. Your scope will change from a mission perspective. You'll change your organizational structure. There's all kinds of changes in your organization. Happens all the time. So if you have this solution, you have to evolve with those changes. So you have to make sure that you're maintaining and managing the solution and able to capture that cyber common operating picture as your organization evolves. So this is very much an evolution and an ongoing event. This is not a specific tool that you turn on and flick a switch and, man, I got a cyber common operating picture. I just bought it. I am good. Stamp the box. I'm compliant. This is, hey, we got something. We need to tailor it. We need to build it to what's right for the organization, and then we need to evolve with it. So it's very, very important. So again, it's powerful, but it's no small undertaking. So again, I started out with the implications earlier that, there's some key challenges around the environment that we have, this distributed environment where different people, different missions, different architectures, different data sets, very difficult to manage to a standard risk profile. But if you truly put the time and energy in to develop these key effectiveness measures, what's important for you, what's meaningful for you, you can track and monitor that at an enterprise-wide level as you incrementally grow and build this program or solution out over time, so you can manage to it. And you can move away from that kind of this gut feel instinct management profile to, I'm building and making my decisions based on real data analytics. I know what the risks are. I can even build in if-then scenarios where if this happens, I know what the risk will be based on this systematic algorithm that I have. So you can go to your leadership, or if there's some political intrigue occurring, saying, hey, listen, I get that we might need to do this, but if we do this, this is what happens, and I have real data to support that. So you really are managing it from a true analytics perspective. And again, the political push-pull is you can work against that by creating this risk economy. So you're incentivizing the behavior that you want by scoring, by getting people to really believe in using this tool as their true management platform. So you're building the right behavior that you want. You're incentivizing the right behavior. And then finally, again, everybody cares about cost, resources, application of resources. By doing this, you're streamlined, you're efficient. Right now, most organizations, they spend money, but they're not making it based on rational data. You have rational data, and you can make decisions that are effective and that are prioritized, and frankly, where it matters most to mitigating the risks to your mission. So again, this cyber common operating picture is very conceptual, and we've done this for real clients. This has been implemented, and we're doing this. But this makes incredible impact, but it's changing the game. We have to move away from the traditional check the box, or hey, I got an issue, vulnerability, traditional assessment process where, hey, what are you doing well, what are you not doing well, and here's some recommendations to what are you not doing well, and then how should we change our behavior, and how should we modify our behavior to make those fixes in near real time based on data analytics. That's where the game has to go for cyber. For us to be effective, we have to leverage automated tools and technologies because we just can't work enough hours in the day. And we have to make meaningful decisions based on specific metrics and data that's relevant to your mission. So